Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the final CGHE Data Collaborative Workshop for the 2025-26 academic year. My name is Emily Trelevin. I am faculty at the Institute for Social Research here at Michigan in the Survey Research Center and Population Studies Centers, and I am the newly appointed Data Harmonization Lead for the Center for Global Health Equity Data Collaborative. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jinkook Lee of the University of Southern California today. Since we have some folks who are new to the Data Collaborative, I'm going to give a quick overview of the CGHE Data Collaborative, and then I'll turn things over to Dr. Lee. Next slide, please. So the CGHE Data Collaborative officially started about 2 years ago. The mission is to convene, consult, and collaborate with partners at the University of Michigan and around the world to use data in innovative ways that promote better health globally. And there are a lot of great services that the Data Collaborative offer. I'll talk a bit about those. And I also want to note the Data Collaborative is headed by Josh Ehrlich, who unfortunately could not be here today, with fantastic support from Christina Rice, who is staff at the center. Next slide, please. So there are three multiple functions organized under three pillars to support global health research here and abroad. The first, exciting for all of us, CGHE provides funding and education. So I want to encourage everyone to watch for the next set of general Center for Global Health Equity funding calls in the fall, and then a data collaborative pilot grant call that will come next winter. The second pillar is offers services to help researchers identify, acquire, curate, and harmonize data for analysis. And then finally, the Data Collaborative supports data analysis and dissemination for CGHE affiliated researchers. Next. And then finally, we are also collaborating with ICPSR on a Center for Global Health Equity Data Collaborative Archive. So this is a great way to publicly disseminate your data. And as I just mentioned, we'll have additional funding sources to support data dissemination available next academic year. Next. So with that, I will introduce Dr. Lee. Dr. Jinkook Lee is a research professor of economics and senior economist at USC Center for Economic and Social Research, where she's also the director of the program on global aging, health, and policy. She also holds appointments as senior economist at RAND and is a professor in the Pardee Rand Graduate School. Dr. Lee's research spans the economics of aging, family and consumer finances, with particular focus on health, retirement, and well-being in older populations. She's developed several large-scale, multidisciplinary longitudinal studies of aging and has served as the co-principal investigator on the Longitudinal Aging Study in India, or LASI, since its inception. And she also leads the Global Research Network of Health and Retirement Studies and developed the survey metadata repository with colleagues at RAND. She received her PhD in family economics from Ohio State University. So with that, I will turn things over to Dr. Lee, who will present on the Gateway to Global Aging data. And I'll note that the Q&A is enabled, so please feel free to put questions in the chat throughout the talk today. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. It's a great pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce Gateway to Global Aging data. So I organized today's talk and think a little bit about why we all like to study population aging globally, and the beginnings and essentials, and the challenges of doing health and retirement types of study globally, and then presenting the infrastructure that our team has developed over the years, the Gateway to Global Aging data, and what we are doing in terms of data harmonization activities. And then our newest initiative of bringing a lot more ecosystem data to the participants' survey data, and our tools to sharing data more widely utilizing the enclave. So I think most of you probably heard that population is getting older. It's not just for high-income countries, but also very broadly, and even in the low and middle-income countries, it is actually a triumph, right? We are all getting older and um, be able to enjoy the life. But at the same time, I think the big question really coming from the policymaker side and thinking about whether the society is sufficiently ready to deal with a large number of older people. So thinking about that, it is actually quite amazing the number of the future generation, how the demographic profile has shifted over the years across the world. So you can see it's not just high-income countries like United States. You see at the bottom of the slide, and you can see the number of children that women give over the years has been really reduced from very large numbers, like countries like India and Kenya. There were like more than 5 births. But now they all come down to the replacement rate. And countries like South Korea and many of the high-income countries is actually much below than that. So that kind of created a concern on overall population replacement. And then there is, of course, a lot longer life expectancy, and that increased over all continent around the world. And starting from living almost like close to only 40 years in continent like Africa, now the life expectancy is almost 70 years. So it's a really different kind of landscape of the human race. So all of that kind of created a concern about the age dependencies, the issue of like whether we can support those older population, because the number is doubling in the next 30 years, but the number of people who are supporting those working old age population is only increasing by 20%. So that really created the impetus of thinking about the population aging consequences at the society. So it goes back. You see my old colleague, Dr. Richard Sussman, who was really the visionary of this aging field. And he was the one who initiated the very important retirement study in the US back in 1990. But then there was in 1997, G8 summit in Denver. And at that Denver summit, every country's leader except Russia came to this conclusion: we need to take connection. We need to get prepared for the population aging. So, and that also created this impetus of like, in order to understand this new aging population, we need to create a data infrastructure to understand the society where people are, their health, their economic status, and their social networks to better understand what this population looks like and where their economic and health needs are. And that was a very important summit because that kind of gave impetus to National Institute on Aging, providing um, like stimulating the discussions to make the health and retirement study to wider population representative over age 50 and older. Before that, 1998, it was just like one cohort of SME study of the age cohort to 51 to 61, and there was a head cohort which was representative of 70 and older, and it was not as widely scoped study. But with that GA summit, it was actually became the national representative over age 50 and older. And at the same time, it brought in many of these high income countries the importance of building the database. So, from that, I think the health and retirement studies model took place in England as an ELSA study, as well as the other European countries. That convincing the policymakers and scientists to bring together and agree upon this essential design. And that design is in order to make implications at the population level, it is very important to create the sample that represent the country. And then they want to understand the not only individuals' health and con- retirement conditions, but also spouses' conditions. So many of the surveys decide to recruit not only the individuals, but their partners. And they also understand today's older people are different from our previous parent generation. Similarly, the future generations also different. So the maintenance of this voice cohort is important. So we will be continue to understand how today's 50s or 60s and 70s are different from different birth cohort and putting in large enough population, large enough sample that will give us a power to do the analysis and then understanding that context that our life is really interwoven, right? Our health influence our working conditions as well as our family dynamics influence the work productivity. Capturing that multidisciplinary content is really important. And then another opportunity is to enrich the data of not only asking participants, but also being able to link to other administrative record would be give us a power. So these essentials came to spread around the world. So as I mentioned, that with that 1998 impetus, we brought in the English language student study of aging in this family in 2002. And then there was a EU-wide effort that was brought in the Health and Share Survey from Europe in 2004. I read the development of first Asian study in Korea that was introduced in 2006. And then there were many other studies came in, especially the Mexican health and aging study is also a very important study that started in 2001. 2001. No, that's correct. And then they followed up in 2003 and then the study stopped for a while because of there were some internal issues not being able to, PIs being able to work on it and raise the funding to move forward with wave three. But fortunately, the team turned around and reintroduced the sample, remarkably putting a lot of the same participants back to the study. I started the Indian study back in 2010, doing our first pilot, and we collected our first wave that created a very large sample. Now we are currently in the wave two, which is very exciting. Another important study has been really the CHARS, which is the study in China, and that also brought in. And but this the this collection of studies continue to grow, and especially the newer studies are really happening in um, in Africa, especially the Kenya that Josh Early is leading. I know that Kenya team did a great pilot, and they are now preparing their first baseline interview. I've been serving on the Egyptian study team's advisory board, which is really remarkable. They completed their first survey and the team has done a tremendous work. I think there is a great potential to continue to grow this very worldwide health and retirement study and bring in very high impact valuable data for the research community. The same principle has been kept. Recruiting population representative samples, keeping it longitudinal so we can study the changes, keeping it the multidisciplinary. And I think one of the most exciting innovations that health and retirement study team made back in 1998 and in 2000 was, very detailed, bringing very detailed, high quality economic data. The integrating biomarker innovation really came from the ERSA team, the English Longitudinal Study of Aging. They sent out the nurses to people's homes and drawing the blood and conducting several performance tests. That has such a positive impact on health and retirement study. And now HRS is also bringing very high quality biomarker data and so forth. So this model has been really followed up in many of these newer studies like Egypt. They are doing omics. And I know Josh is also planning to do many, many exciting studies. Another important network of data that HRS family of studies brought in is accessing cognitive protocols across different countries around the world. The HCAP protocol, one of the strengths of the original design that HRS team pioneered under the leadership of Dr. David Weir and Ken Melga was that leveraging this existing HRS platform, but trying to create a battery that enables to access cognitive status of the people in the community. I think that really revolutionized the way that we think about it. So, in doing a health study, and especially dementia study, which is very much suffering with underdiagnosis, if you are just relying upon medical record or clinical studies, then there is a very much of the biases associated to those kind of small clinical sample per se. But being able to create the battery that enables us to access cognitive status of older adults at the community setting really help the scientists to think about this very important question of late cognition and dementia at the population level, because now we cannot completely remove all the biases because there is issues of attrition and um, of the longitudinal sample, as well as being agreed upon in the study is another important selection issue that we need to take care of. However, at the minimum, it is a lot more representative than a small cohort study, which is just based upon the clinics. So nonetheless, I think this very important HCAP protocol has been brought into the health and retirement study. And by linking it to existing longitudinal cohort, we can make a recommendation on dementia prevalence and their risk factors at the population level. So one of the important, I think, the goal, so to speak, of this HRS and HCAP study is that we are all trying to tackle common research questions because we are very much interested in understanding aging processes, older population, and prepare the society for the population aging. So all these questions about aging and retirement process, trends and trajectories, and understanding the disparities and thinking about the policies and evaluating the impact shared by global studies, because those are all um, same kind of research questions that faced by the scientists around the world. Similarly, in designing HCAP, we also dealing with the same increasing older population, and many of the part of the countries, the number of people living with dementia increases, and we want to understand the risk factors. Although the questions that we are working is the same, but the information, how we can capture that, needs to be modified because every context is different. The socially, culturally, or it's very different way that we need to ask questions. And all the policies and programs are different. It has different names, and how it is structured is very different. So every study is starting to deal with making a modification and deals with those kind of unique challenges that countries have. So that's where the gateway to global aging data comes in. So as a PI, it was a big task to prepare the data to be shared with the larger research community. But and also as a researcher, I also started as a junior researcher working with the original HRS and developing the first version of Asian HRS, CLOSA. It was such a daunting task. So what I decided to do is developing this infrastructure that helps both PIs as well as the individual researchers. So what the mission of our team has been really prepare the data and information and be a hub so people can come to our site and gather the information, but try to make the data science ready. I think this is really helping researchers to understand because has been a lot of decisions made to make each of the countries' data comparable to the original HRS. But knowing what kind of decisions made is very different. So we set up series of like aims that we put together, preparing those analysis ready data files so researchers can jump into the data analysis more quickly because they don't have to wrestle with different data structures and codings and so forth. But we provide all the information that related with the context and make the code available and document the information so any of the individual researchers can understand those kind of decisions we have made. But also we wanted to be a leader in thinking about next generations of research. So trying to bring in innovations like thinking about how we can harmonize data, how we can better understand the context of the environment and thinking about the environmental algorithms and making a contribution to train the next generation scientists through a variety of different activities like seminars and workshops and coordinating special issues and doing hackathons. So let me introduce the harmonized data set that our team is building. So this data set is a single data file at the individual level, and we bring in all the cross-wave data files and create comparably defined variables across all the HRS and HCAP studies. So it has a series of different data files. We have harmonized core that is mainly bringing in um, longitudinal core interview data, but we also um, bring in a lot of self-completion questionnaire too, especially in surveys like HRS, ERSA, SHARE, and this countries with a high literacy, the self-administered questionnaire has been utilized widely. And we want to bring in those data and complementing the core because the decision that each of the country team made between what to administer as a part of the core interview, sending the interviewers to the field versus sending the questionnaire or leave the questionnaire behind so the study participant fill out differs, but the same content is collected. We also create separate harmonized end of life data, which is compiling all the interview data from the family members of the deceased participants. This is very valuable sources of information. We understand, the circumstances around um, the participants' deaths and a few months is before that. So if people are interested in like cognitive status before this person has passed away, those kind of information can be collected. All the decisions about the inheritance and the wealth or health conditions before passed away, those information is can be also found, and this is again compiled as a single data force. Harmonized life history is really built upon the life history data. That was innovation that Share team has brought in. And their work on life history has been very important to thinking about the early life experiences of participants because our life doesn't start at age 50. There are long history of life before the survey participants enter the survey. And that structure was utilized for Cher and Elsa and also Charles. But HRS did not follow that protocol because HRS had a longer life history, longer panel span, and it is also very expensive to administer life history and didn't want to interrupt that longitudinal panel. So what that means to our team is bring in building harmonized life history data, which is collected differently and filling up creating the sequence data that allows the researchers to think about what would be the um, timing of certain exposure that matters more, or the duration of experience, how that can influence our life differently. So I think it's again very interesting data that researchers can utilize it. Harmonized cognitive assessment protocol is also very prominent product that we have put together because the cognitive test is administered differently across different countries. And we cannot really take the test course literally. So we have a whole team, my colleague, read Arden Gross, Dr. Gross at Johns Hopkins, read this initiative, and it has been very important to providing a grant that enables many other researchers to jump in and to thinking about same underlying cognition construct. So I think it is very exciting data to further explore. And then there is harmonized COVID, which influenced many of us, actually all of us, very significant way. And harmonized COVID data is also quite interesting and challenging because level of harmonization among the PI was much more limited because we are all dealing with this pandemic differently and resources were given differently. So timing and the frequency of COVID data and structural COVID survey was very different. So, but nonetheless, it all had the same shared goal of to understand the pandemic, how pandemic influenced people's life, and how our population dealt with the pandemic differently, capturing that behavior. And the newest initiative that we've been working on is harmonizing the environmental exposure data, which I will introduce a little bit more. But before we get there, just briefly, the process I can introduce what harmonic data set, how we create those data sets to make that compatible. So we start with the original survey variables, and all of those raw data is a lot, and the variable names are called differently. So we kind of streamline all of that. Think about it as like you have a very talented RA working through all of this for you, so you can jump into that step of giving you analytic data file that is all cleaned up at the level of individuals and spouses and with a complete code book. The process can be simple in some variables like smoking. It's basically just decoding, right? So how the question is asked, the response patterns, we're just kind of basically cleaning up and decoding the variables. In other cases, it's much more complex and bringing information from both self-completion data and CAPI data and putting all together into our harmonized data file. And you can see this is a case of the JSTAR, Japanese study of retirement and health and aging. And then we kind of bring in all of this information about their household assets and create the harmonized JSTAR variables. And you can see all of those information is prepared as a code book and get the details that researchers need to know. And we encourage everybody to read it. And using those kind of data, you can see we can understand the patterns in time trend. And so this is one of our earlier work looking at disability prevalence across different countries. What was really remarkable is that there is a very different patterns, both time trend and in some countries, disability is mostly people are getting healthier and disability prevalence is decreasing. But in some countries, disability is actually increasing. So, especially a country that stands out here is like Mexico and Czechia. And I think one of the most interesting thing is we see this in like dementia as well. Now, in many of the low and middle income countries, people are successfully living longer to being able to be demented or being disabled. So it is not really suggesting the overall population health is getting worse. We need to really think about the uh, how a lot of this prevalence data, what it says in the context of the survivor. And this another example that we've been looking at is the to think about the power of longitudinal data and understanding the implication of those health status on other aspects of the caregiving. There is a lot of interest in the literature about how caregiving can be important both for the caregivers because it puts a lot of pressure on the caregivers, and their health and their mental health is influenced a lot. But in this particular study, our team has looked at it is not only the mental health of the caregiver, but it also matters of the people who receive the caregiving. So we've been looking at like how informal care receiving, whether we are receiving the persistent care from the same caregiver, whether it is spouse or the children, or how that is compared with losing a care or receiving more care because of the there is some changes in family dynamics. And what we have found is whatever it is, whether it is regardless whether it's spouse or children, whenever there is a different structure in caregiving happens, that creates additional burden on the care recipients, which is very interesting to think about. This family dynamics influence, of course, both sides, but being able to thinking about the overall impact at both caregiver level and receiver level is very enlightening to thinking about the impacts of the caregiving. So what we have done is really try to curate a series of general issues so we can encourage people to think about these important research questions. So we started with focusing a lot on cross comparisons, cross-country comparisons on retirement and health, how system influence that, and their health and well-being. Also look at some of it on the family and social environment and that issue came out from different genres and trying to entertain um, different topics and different disciplines. And some of our more recent work is very interesting. There has been a lot of interest in the long-term care policies around the world. So we last year we did the health economics special issue, and my colleague and Arden and I have been looking at a lot of epidemiological comparisons, so various physical, mental, cognitive health. And then we had the last year put together our own special issue, talking a lot more about gateway to globalizing data. And then currently we are working on pushing out the education how education influence our aging experiences and health with a very large global focus. And just few words about our recent special issue that came out earlier this year is talking a lot about the content and the different measurement issues on health and retirement studies as well as age cap. And this issue has many methodological issues that our team has been dealt with, making different decisions when we develop a new study in designing an edge cap, or what would be the best way to thinking about this, both building a new study as well as analyzing it into and when we make a comparison, we don't want to make any not proper comparison or unfair comparison. So I think those has been an important issue that we've been grappling with. And then some of the newer resources like our policy explorer as well as environmental activism. And there is my colleague, Dr. Arden, and in terms of HCAP data harmonization, I think we have put a lot of energies on building in pre-statistical harmonization that is actually led by Emily Brancino and your colleague at Michigan, as well as Miguel Arcius in Colombia. They have done a lot of work there. We did a lot of statistical harmonization and invitation. My colleague Eric Meyer has led that effort. So a lot of this has been this methodological work really enabled other researchers look at the risk factors or the impact of dementia, and many of our publication has been out in the literature. And my colleague Sarah Dar has done a tremendous work building on a lot of environmental data. And I think one of the important point here is we build the global model. So our methodology is done consistently. So when we make cross-country comparisons, at least our environmental variables are completely harmonized. So it's not driven by any of the idiosyncrasies of the data itself. And we've been writing series of paper looking at like PM2.5, but also getting into the newer papers. We're looking at a lot of green space and blue space, the access to water, how also the light at the nighttime influence our sleep pattern, of course, and extreme weather, looking at the extreme weather and heat. And most recently, we started also looking at the hurricanes and flood and how that influence the both short long term as well as long term health and cognition of our population. And all of those global exposure data has been linked to increasing number of the HRS studies. Our team is currently working with the CADAS, the Caribbean study team. So those data will be also linked with all this exposure data. And then my colleague David Knapp has been leading the policy floor, mainly bringing in all the idiosyncratic institutional changes. And David is the most detail-oriented person I have ever met in my life. And it is just incredible effort to reviewing all these policy details, looking through all the legal documents and policy documents, and building up and identifying the differences in institution and policies. And there has been many reforms, both in the education policies and retirement policies, that allow us to make a causal estimate. And also there within, even in the US, especially a lot of the policy variations in LTC, the long-term care policies and education policies. More than 100 documents came out, and we've been consulted with policy experts in all these countries. So our team do a lot of legwork, but all this document has been evaluated by the large number of experts within the country. So here I'm just showing you a Mexico document. So we consulted our colleagues in Mexico, Emma Aguila, but also colleagues in OECD and other international organizations bring a lot of information at the very detailed level. So you can see how the policy changes has happened over time. All this information is available on our website. So that effort of bringing in the policy data as well as environmental exposure data led us to launch a new coordinating center, which we call Gateway Exposure Coordinating Center, to provide more exposure data for us to understand AD/ADRD risk, but also overall healthy aging. We launched it about less than 2 years ago, but the mission here is really thinking um, about the exposome research and identifying the key research priorities through consensus building. As you can see, it has been my great pleasure to work with so many scientists across different fields. We learn a lot. One of the most remarkable things is we all have the same goal. We want to understand the health and behavior and its impact on the society. But our methodology is very different and our trainings are very different. So, so often we call the same thing with the different names. And even the methodologies, we use the same similar techniques, but call it with the different names. So what we are trying to do is we trying to bring in all those experts at a very high level of technical details, but work it through together to understand and bringing the literature at the state of art all together so we can understand the same phenomena with a greater depth. And I think that has been really very enjoyable activities, and I learned so much. And what our team has been trying to do is not just like economists to learn a little bit about health or sociologists trying to learn a little bit about environment. We are not trying to do that. What we are trying to do is really bring in hardcore experts and to understand the phenomena better and providing guidance. So, because a lot of health scientists don't care how we impute, but we provide those high level harmonized data for the people who are interested in using those information. Similarly, a lot of the social behavioral scientists cannot know all the details about toxicology. So we try to build those kind of exposure data for those social scientists and get everybody together and make those data available for the larger research community. So that has been our effort. And when we determining exposome, the exposome field currently is very much originated from like biology meets chemistry, kind of the approach. What we try to understand or trying to bring to the exposome community is that social environment also matters and policy environment also matters. And all of that is really interacting with each other and exposure influence across our life course, starting, at the conception through our early life, throughout the midlife, and to understand that pathways of life course, how environments influence our life over time is really fascinating to think about it, and that helps us to move our science forward. Because exposure is so vast, I mean, it's pretty much everything under the sun, right? So what we were decided to do is trying to organize our effort through prioritization. While we recognize that it may be still very smaller set of environmental variables that we can think about, but we did choose some of the key environmental factors such as policy, extreme weather, the communities that we live in, the social aspects of it, physical aspects of it, but recognizing that each individual could have a different experiences, and then understanding that we are within the context, both within the community and the country and state, but also the time. Our times really determine the technology, the advances in technology, and the cultural norms. So all of this has been a very fascinating journey. We try to make all of this available through our enclave. So Gateway Data Enclave is a secure remote access environment for supported by NIA's linkage platform. And I think what is really important to note here is we are also linking all this exposure data, both at the environmental exposure, but also policy exposure. So in our data enclave, we are providing participant level clean harmonized data linked to exposure data. And our team is leading end-to-end processing, meaning that we integrate all this data and managing the data. So in order to come in and utilizing this data enclave, everything is of course free. And our team is providing the support, and we also do training at the part of the GSA workshop. We do like a 1 day training to do that. Current limitation of the Gateway Data Enclave is the access is limited to the US-based researchers because server is supported by linkage, and we have to work with the linkage platforms limitations. However, for the global research community, this has been a limitation. So what we have done is we actually recently secured a partnership with the AD Data Initiative, ADDI. So this has been a really exciting new initiative. We just signed the contract last month. And what we are doing is working with AD Workbench and making a different authentication platform. So our gateway data, harmonized data is accessible to all the non-US based researchers as well, because it is no longer using US social security numbers. And we are putting a second secured enclave in EU and Africa. So all the data that governing rules under the EU and Africa can be also overcome, having this second and third enclave in global location. So it is really a very exciting stage of our project, bringing global research community together. Really appreciate the opportunity, and I want to invite everybody to come to our website and take advantage of the resources that we have built. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. That is just an absolutely incredible data resource. It is so exciting to see that it is live. I can only imagine how much effort went into creating that. Even to do that at a small scale is really difficult. So it's quite an achievement, and I'm excited to see all the amazing innovative research that's going to come out of that. And I'm also particularly excited to see that you are already working towards expanding access for researchers in the EU and Africa. I see that we have one question in the chat. Liz, would you like to unmute and ask Dr. Lee your question, or I'm happy to read it if not? Okay, we'll see. I'm actually not sure about participant capabilities. So, Liz's question was, is there harmonized data? And she asked this much earlier in the seminar. So you touched on some of these aspects, but she asked about, is there harmonized data on nutrition, food security, and or GPS location that can be used to link to other data sets? So perhaps if you can talk a bit more about nutrition and food security, that would be great.
Okay, sure. So nutrition data has not been collected in many of the HRS family of studies, so that didn't allow us to opportunity to bring in nutrition data. But I do know there are a couple of countries, especially the Nicola team, the Northern Ireland team, has been pioneered in, or they put a lot of energy in the nutrition data. We recently collected nutrition data in India, and also Japan has collected those data, but I don't think that data has been harmonized at this point. But that's something that we can consider. Food security is an important research question, and I think that's actually we can do that. I know we have that data in India, and food security is much more important issues in low and middle income country. So I do see a great potential there. In terms of GPS location, that would not be never ever shared. I mean, because that really is very highly tied with uh, the identifying participants. So even any of the exposome data, the linkage should be done by each of the country team. Our work is more of the supporting the handholding each of the study team to be able to link those exposome data. Once the data is linked, that using geographic information, then we make that data available through our enclave.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. Preeti has asked about grant opportunities. Can you talk about grant opportunities that use the gateway to global aging data sets? So, Preeti, I'm not sure if I'm guessing that you mean about opportunities to get grant funding to leverage this data. So, if there are any available, if you could talk about that, Dr. Lee.
So, I mean, the gateway itself is an R01, and we don't have any particular pilot mechanism in our grant. But I think those would be something that um, I have been asked to be writing a lot of letter of support for the other people's R01s. So I know people are writing analytic grants to NIH, and I think typically the secondary data analysis grant are smaller in scale, like an RO3s. So I think the participant can write a grant to NIH directly. That would be my recommendation.
Yep, I think the RO3 mechanism is an excellent way to get some support for secondary data analysis, and so I would second that recommendation. I think that's a really good fit for analyzing, doing secondary analysis with the gateway data. David has said, "Thank you, Jinkook, for your amazing talk. I was wondering what has your recent experience been with the data enclave and other processes to help facilitate analysis of sensitive data? Also wondering about your view of synthetic data for trainees to work on. Thank you."
Thank you, David. I think it is so. First of all, the enclave is very good solution for the future. I don't know many of the how how aware of many of our participants are. I heard a lot about these challenges created by AI. So recently, like there has been a lot of AI-driven research using enhanced data, made floss journal decided publish anything against enhanced, which was a big shock to the scientific research community. I've seen so many papers came out using charts, looks like AI-driven research. So there is definitely an important and significant trend toward utilizing enclave more in enabling researchers download the data because in the enclave space, you cannot utilize AI to do the analysis. So I do think it's important to utilize enclave not only for the sensitive data, but even just to be able to protect the scientists from more AI-driven junk per se. In terms of synthetic data, actually in the current research cycle, we've been looking at the synthetic data very carefully, and we did actually create a synthetic data file for the researchers. Through that process, what I learned is that creating the same data structure for the synthetic data is quite challenging. So we did make one synthetic data file, and there we were able to targeting our effort with a smaller set of variables, accounting for household structure, and use that as a teaching tool. So I think there is a great potential to do that. But whether so that was our initial goal. We were able to achieve that. As a second step, we were planning to bring in a lot of environment exposure data like PM 2.5 or NO2, because those are more difficult to get researchers to have access to. So we worked a little bit with our the statisticians and realized that the spatial confounding is much harder to adequately capture it in the synthetic data environment. So it's depending on the goal of synthetic data. I think synthetic data is perfect in terms of letting people play with the data and understand what it is. But people cannot publish it with that. And if we are not being able to capture the spatial confounding structure adequately, the preliminary data cannot provide high quality evidence for people to make modeling adjustments. So I don't think that's a possibility. So the path that we decide to take is to make the enclave space more usable and accessible. So through that ADDI collaboration, opening up to the global researchers and create the server space more efficiently and with a greater level of details is actually better path forward is, at least that's my current thinking on this topic.
Great, thank you. And I see that Liz has asked where the harmonized food security data is located as a follow-up to her earlier question.
So I think all the harmonized data is within each of the data files. So, if we are talking about harmonization of particular, whether it's a food security or the family living arrangement or chronic care arrangement, is all within each study. So harmonized ELSA, harmonized HRS, harmonized LASI, you have to go to each of the data file. And also, if the question is more about topic oriented to understand where can I find this type of topics, whether it's for security, then I would invite Liz to come to our search engine. So my colleague, Bas Wheelman, has created this search engine, concordance search engine that enables people to look at and search for any of the search terms across all the surveys and timelines, the waves, because many questions come and go across as many of these studies are longitudinal. So if you come to our website, type the search terms, then it will give you all the data that has questions about food security.
Wonderful, thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and so I'll allow people to enter any last questions into the Q&A. Dr. Lee, I'm wondering, so we have certainly at Michigan, we have a lot of folks who are doing primary data collection related to aging in a lot of different settings globally. So I'm wondering if you have any advice for folks who might be doing their own data collection that might want to think prospectively about harmonization in the future.
Um, I think my recommendation is talk to people. I think that really helps to avoid any kind of making of big mistakes. I think we cannot be perfect. There are so many issues that we run into if we are doing data collection. So many of the times I call my job as a problem solving job. And people ask me how you're doing, how your project is doing. Then I always answer, we have a lot of problems, but most of our problems are smaller problems, not big problems. So you got to keep the perspective and see what we can do with the end goal of making high quality data. And I think one important lesson that I learned is monitoring is very important. Keep your eyes on, especially during the data collection period. I have many 7 a.m. standing calls to keep looking at the data in various aspects.
Wonderful. Well, this is an absolutely incredible resource. I'm so excited to see it live, and I encourage everyone to go in and explore this incredible resource. Dr. Lee, thank you so much for taking time for this really helpful orientation, and I hope everyone has a great weekend. Thank you.